Welcome to another episode of Freedom to be Fred. In this episode, we're going to change the electronics in the Danchee Rich Rock, so stay tuned. Let's get started. The reason why I'm changing the electronics is because of the upgraded servo and horn. The ready-to-run radio lacks the necessary endpoint adjustment needed to eliminate the stress on the steering hubs and carriers. The ESC that I went for is a Hobby Wing 1080 ESC. Now I'm really not concerned about the motor limit of the ESC because these are only, after all, 380 motors. Finding the radio was the most challenging part, as most cheap pistol grip radios lack the control to do multiple modes of steering without going into menus or hacks. So I decided to go with a Radiolink T8FB stick radio. Now, I'm going to say this radio is not for everyone. The reason why I say this radio isn't for everyone is some guys like to adjust all the settings on the fly. Without a screen on this radio, you can't. Either you need an Android device with on-the-go specifications so you can update the settings, or a Windows machine. The Windows machine is also used to update the firmware. We're out here on the bench, and the first thing I want to do is disconnect the motor leads. For most of you, this is just a JST connector, but on mine I've already replaced it with a micro Deans. So I'm going to desolder these off camera. And if you want to upgrade your connector to the motor, now would be a good time to do it. Now there are 4 screws that hold the bottom skid plate on, 2 on each side. And for those who are wondering, the ride height is currently at 2 5/8 inches. Now that the skid is dropped, we can disconnect the 2 servos and remove the ESC. Now that I have the ESC mounted, I can find a place for the receiver. Here's the radio. As you can see, I already installed the return spring for the left stick. My plan is to run the front steer off the left stick, the rear steer off the right stick, and since I'm right-handed and I have better fine motor control, I'm going to put the throttle on here. I also did that because most of the times they're going to be using front steering anyway. It's time for a quick test. I have all my connections made at the receiver. I temporarily soldered the motor connectors on, and I disconnected the servo horns from their linkage. So I'm going to power up the radio and power up the ESC. Okay, right now everything's in its default mode. I just want to test to make sure I have functionality. It's for the front servo, rear servo, and my throttle. To power the rear motor, I'm going to be using this wire to run from the front to the rear motor connectors. The red and black wires of the rear motor run up to the front to join up with the yellow and blue wires of the ESC. Our next step is to mount the receiver and switch, and I'm going to be running the antenna wire through a coffee straw. While programming the radio and receiver, I had an issue programming the EPAs on channel 4, which is my front steering. I reached out to Radiolink. While I was waiting, my new wheels came in. After a couple days, Radiolink sent me a different firmware which worked on this radio. The only downside is channel 8 is non-functional. Here's a quick and basic overview of the app on my Android phone. The first tab we have here is the servo tab. That just shows me the movement of my throttle sticks or switches on this graph. The next tab is our Basics tab. That contains our servo reversing, sub-trims, EPAs left and right, failsafe, and delay. Now I spent most of my time setting the EPAs, so in order to change something I have to click on that box, EPA left, change my value to 46, hit done. Now in order to program it to the radio, you have to hit the right button. So each time you want to make a change, you have to go through that process. It's not as easy as some other radio systems out there. The next tab is the Advanced tab. This is more airplane specific. We do have dual rates here. And then we have our Systems tab. We can set our transmitter fail-safe voltage, our auxes, and our program mixes. At this point in the video, I normally go to a set of rocks that I know well. It's kind of my shakedown area. But unfortunately, it just snowed yesterday, so I am going to do a little crawling on a couple mounds of snow in my backyard. It's really a challenge for me with this radio because I'm so used to a pistol grip radio. So having two sticks in my hands is really a challenge and a setback for me at the same time. So it's going to take me a while to learn how to control the vehicle the same way I did. Oh. The ESC voltage from the Hobby Wing is set to 6 volts. Now I measured the voltage of the 2-in-1 receiver ESC, and when I measured it, it was 4.74 volts, so basically 4.8 volts. So the additional voltage really makes a difference. I noticed it. The steering's faster, it seems to have more torque. The last time I had a stick radio was in the 1980s with a Tyco turbo hopper. Hopefully next time I'll actually be able to go out in the rocks and crawl. It's kind of hard to crawl in snow, and that combined with a new radio makes it especially difficult. So stay tuned and maybe I can get out on the rocks. Thanks for watching.